This function here executes the code which is in there, and in this case, this then throws this alert or shows this alert box by calling the built-in alert function. Now, that's something you can do in other scenarios, which we'll also cover later in the course. Of course, you might want to send a HTTP request to a server and store some data there, for example. But sometimes you also have functions which you just use to outsource some code. Maybe code which you need to run multiple times, and therefore normally you would have to copy and paste it around, which never is a great idea as a programmer. You want to be lazy, you don't want to repeat yourself, you want to write code once and then rather execute it multiple times by referring to the function it's coded in. And therefore you could have a function which is simply there to outsource some functionality. In this case, a function that adds two pieces of information together, which adds two numbers together. So in that case, you might not want to alert or do something inside of the function. You maybe just want to return the result. And that's something you can do with the return keyword, which is built into JavaScript. So now we saw a couple of keywords: const, let, function, and now also return. And return does what the name implies. This function now returns the value that's stored in a result as a result of this function call. This means that when we now execute add like this, nothing will happen if I reload the page. You see, nothing happens. We don't see anything because now the function itself doesn't do anything that has a visual impact. Instead, it returns a value. So that means that add now gives us a value, just like the plus operator or the multiplication operator gave us a value. If we add two numbers together, this gives us a value, and we store that value in a constant. So now calling our function gives us a value, and that means we can store this in a variable, for example. So here we could say, I want to have my addition result, and you can pick any name you want, stored in this constant. And I'm using a constant here, just as I do it here in my function, because I never assign a new value to the addition result or here to the internal result. I never assign a new value with the equal sign again. And if you never assign a new value, then this effectively is a constant, and then you should mark it as such to make it clear that this will never change. Makes it easier to understand your code for other developers. So now the result of this function call is stored in addition result. And this means that we can now use it anywhere in the code. For example, we could now use addition result to set our current result equal to it, like this. Of course, this is now kind of redundant. We store the result of this function call in a new constant just to take the constant or the value stored in a constant and then set it equal to current result, to our variable. Of course, we can kind of shorten this and just set current result equal to the result of our function call and get rid of that other line. And now current result is the result of this calculation. So that means, of course, that if I now reload this, we see 3 down there for the result. Because I have add with 1 and 2, the result of this is 3. The result gets stored here, and then we use current result to pass it to this output result function, which is provided in the vendor.js file, which will in the end output the calculation result in this place of our HTML document. Of course, this is now incorrect. This is now not the correct description of what we did. So this is how we can define our own functions with or without parameters, with or without the return statement, and how we can call them. Now, of course, we're still calling this immediately when this code runs. So ultimately, the goal will be to connect this to the button, which I'll do in a second, but not before diving into the order in which you can define things here, and also the implication it has when you define a variable or a constant inside of a function versus outside of a function.